This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Jenny Ifft, K-State Flinchbaugh Agricultural Policy Chair, and Brady Brewer, K-State Associate Professor in Agricultural Economics, begins today's show discussing ad hoc payments and what producers need to consider when receiving these one-time government payments. The show and ad hoc conversation continues with Jenny Ifft and Brady Brewer. K-State Extension horticulture agent for Butler County, Calla Edwards, ends the show noting a survey done among master gardeners and gardening enthusiasts that revealed their favorite tools, supplies, and plants. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our show discussing ad hoc payments with K-State Flinchbaugh Agricultural Policy Chair Jenny Ifft and K-State Associate Professor in Agricultural Economics Brady Brewer. Jenny, Brady, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
While we're talking about ad hoc payments or one-time government payments, Brady, can you explain to us a little more about the details of what is an ad hoc payment?
Yeah, so the term ad hoc, if you look it up in a dictionary, means when necessary or needed. So I think first off, we probably want to just distinguish what makes an ad hoc payment versus what would maybe be a traditional Farm Bill program payment. So as the definition implies, when necessary or needed, these are payments that some form of government, I think here lately it's been more the executive branch of the government. So the president says, hey, there is a need out there to provide farmers or some sector of the economy with relief, and they have found the funds to do it. It is not from a recurring bill of any type. They have found the funds, and then they have issued those funds. This is different from what we have traditionally known in agriculture from the Farm Bill, where, we re-up the Farm Bill on a regular basis, and those payments that farmers sign up for, they're set formulas that we know are going to trigger payments, whether it be price levels or county revenue levels. Those are what I would consider more the traditional Farm Bill program payments. The difference here is just how we can expect these payments to come. These ad hoc payments can be very irregular in terms of when they come, because it takes the political will of whoever's in power or a certain branch of government to kind of issue them. Okay. There are other types of payments out there, such as disaster relief, that may be more on an ad hoc basis. But here we're talking about, I think a really good example is the market facilitation payments we saw about 5 or 6 years ago that were to compensate farmers for the losses they saw due to some of the trade negotiations that were happening at that time.
Jenny, how important have you seen these past payments be for agriculture?
Well, they've been large since 2018, so we're going on 8 years right now. One way to look at importance is how big these ad hoc payments are relative to farm income for the state of Kansas. So that would be all income across crop and livestock operations. And since 2018, Brady already mentioned the market facilitation program payments from the first Trump administration. We also had COVID-related payments. We had the emergency relief program, which was a series of disaster payments. And then recently we had the ECAP, Emergency Commodity Assistance Program, and SDRP, Supplemental Disaster Relief Program. So we've passed the acronym quiz, and we may have another one coming. The current administration has been pledging that there would be some type of tariff relief payment or trade relief payment for farmers. But to get back to farm income, we can look at how big these payments are relative to farm income in Kansas. And if you pull the numbers from 2018, ad hoc payments have been from 5 to 47% of net farm income. For 2025. They're forecast to be about a quarter of net farm income. So That's a pretty large share, and it does go up and down a lot. And part of the reason is these payments aren't always made in the year that the loss is incurred. You can compare this to 2015 to 2017, which, if you remember, those were pretty lean years. And in those years, government payments, so the Farm Bill payments, the ARC, agricultural risk coverage, and PLC, price loss coverage, those Farm Bill payments were about 15 to 25% of Kansas net farm income. So they were sizable. Net farm income was lower in those years. But, overall, you have seen these ad hoc payments make up a substantial share of farm income in recent years.
For ad hoc payments, do all operations get the same amount, or is it scaled?
So it really just depends on the program. So the ECAP payments, Emergency Commodity Assistance Program, that was about, $20 to $40 an acre, depending on the crop. But it was one rate for an acre of crops planted across the country. Some of the disaster programs are based on losses. So it's like a top up to crop insurance, or it can make a disaster payment for uninsured crops. So again, it really varies a lot depending on the program.
And a lot of times when we're thinking about money, we think about money as a positive thing. However, when we're thinking about ad hoc payment money, does it need to be viewed a little bit differently?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, because the political will of these ad hoc payments can depend on who's in power, and sometimes they have to go find the money for it, the variability and timing of these payments can be a lot greater than what we see with Farm Bill payments, right? We typically know when Farm Bill payments are going to be paid out. Because there is a set formula behind those Farm Bill payments, while a farmer may not know their exact amount that they're going to get paid until after harvest, we can start estimating, we know the conditions of the crop, we know the price levels, we can predict out like a marketing year average for prices ahead of time, before harvest. So a farmer knows, okay, roughly at the end of the year or at this point in time, this is what I can expect to get paid based on current crop conditions. With these ad hoc payments, though, since there's really no set formula announced ahead of time, it does depend on the political will at the time as well. We have to be a lot more careful with how we manage them. So I'll give a couple examples. The second tranche of the market facilitation payment, it was announced on November 15th of 2019. This was announced, and they started paying mere days or weeks after it was announced. This didn't give the farmers a whole lot of time to plan, thinking about tax purposes, capital expenditures at the end of the year for tax purposes. It didn't give the farmers a whole lot of time to plan, okay? And now we're currently here in 2025 experiencing kind of the opposite, where the government said, hey, we have seen President Trump and heard him say, hey, I want to compensate farmers for maybe some of the trade losses they're experiencing with some of the tariffs, but we haven't seen that come through. So in this case, we have the opposite, where we've kind of had some announcements, but nothing official has come down the pipeline. So it's being delayed. So those are really two examples that show the two kind of sides of ad hoc payments, coming quickly or being delayed due to government issues or political will. So when we think about that, farmers need to think a little bit more long-term with these ad hoc expenditures and be ready if stuff is going to pay out, or in some cases, if it's not going to be paid out. So the management of this is a little bit different from when we are guaranteed or a more certain payment is going to happen.
And thinking of those different strategies, Brady, you mentioned long-term. And Jenny, what are some considerations if we're thinking long-term for producers that they should take into consideration?
Right. So long-term is I guess if we could just pick one, we'd probably say think long-term. It's really easy, especially in sort of lean times or times of tight profit margins, to focus on short-term needs. But what I'm encouraging producers to do is take a step back and think about positioning yourself for the next few years. So that's the most important thing. Next, cash flow planning. It's essential. So, looking at, are you going to have enough cash? What's your working capital situation? Not just right now, but over the next, next year, next 2 or 3 years. So that's one part of it. Think long-term, consider cash flow planning. The third one is consider paying down debt. Now that's not for everybody, but if you have sufficient cash for your short-term needs, you don't need that that money that would be for a payment for an expense that's coming up. And also if you have a lot high interest rates on your current debt, that's a situation where paying down debt could lead to some real savings and put the operation in a good position. Next, number 4, evaluate equipment purchases carefully. This can be a really attractive option when you get a one-time payment. Farms have to regularly update their equipment, and it can provide tax savings through accelerated depreciation. But we're encouraging people to look at what's the impact of your cost of production. So you're going to have high machinery costs. Look at your labor and operating costs. Also your long-term asset efficiency. And I do know with the Kansas Farm Management Association, they do see that farms that are more profitable have lower machinery costs per acre. So that is something that can have a real difference. So number 5, avoid letting this payment influence cash rent expectations. So there's some producers out there, they might have some annual negotiations with a landowner, and that landowner might have heard, hey, I heard you got this big payment, and that might become a part of negotiations. So, being able to communicate that, okay, here's my current income, here's what this payment was, it was a one-time payment, and the cash spread should be based on future expected income, not past payments. So managing those expectations there and perhaps going into those negotiations, with some understanding and ability to explain that.
That was Jenny Ifft and Brady Brewer from K-State's Department of Agricultural Economics. When we come back from the break, we'll once again be joined by Brady and Jenny as we continue our ad hoc conversation. If you're going to miss the rest of the conversation but would like to hear the rest of it, you can always find it by going to agtoday.net. We're now cutting that short break, but we'll be right back. You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we continue our show and conversation about ad hoc payments, which are one-time government payments, with K-State Flinchbaugh Agricultural Policy Chair Jenny Ifft and K-State Associate Professor in Agricultural Economics Brady Brewer. Jenny, did you have a question you wanted to ask Brady?
Brady, we talked that these payments might, come out. There might be an announcement. These tariff payments, there might be an announcement sometime this week or next week. How concerned should producers be about tax planning? Because, technically it could come out before the end of the year. It could come out on January 1st. That would make me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, and it would make me nervous too, Jenny. So I think that's what we're saying here is thinking a little bit more long term. So if I'm a producer here, we could have these payments be announced here over the next couple of weeks. We're currently recording this at the 1st of December in 2025. We've only got a month left before, tax rolls. Most farmers are on a January 1 tax planning cycle. That means that you may have a large revenue intake here at the end of the year. So thinking about prepaying expenses to maybe shift costs from the future crop cycles to this tax year may be a certain scenario there. So that's why, I think to clarify what Jenny is saying in terms of thinking more long-term is thinking beyond just this particular tax year. And especially from the cash flow planning perspective and the capital expenditure planning. The example I give is let's take the farm that Jenny is saying. We could get a revenue inflow here in December of 2025 from these payments that could be announced. I think in general, the immediate strategy would be to say, let's maximize our profit this year. Let's see if we can do a capital expenditure that we could get accelerated depreciation on to reduce our taxable income in 2025. The problem with that is, let's say we get to 2026. Let's take everything we've said about ad hoc. It takes the political will. They're more variable. We continue to have a downturn 2026. Well, if the farm program payments aren't going to trigger, we now need working capital and sufficient liquidity into 2026 if more ad hoc payments don't show up. So I think that's a prime example of when we say think long term, is that it may be worthwhile to take a tax hit this year. And obviously, every farmer, we would advise you to work with your accountant. They know your operation best. But it's worth asking the question, what happens if we don't get the ad hoc payments next year? Do I have enough cash or short-term working capital to survive? And if the answer is no, that's where we may want to think about not going to, get that accelerated depreciation this year, taking a slight tax hit, but saving that ad hoc payment this year for next year when it may not come. And, the name of the game here in these lower commodity price environments with this ad hoc era is survive in advance, right? So, thinking about what will it take for me to stay in operation next year if an ad hoc payment doesn't come around. This is a concept that I call burn rate, right? How much cash do we have on hand to burn if revenues stay low? How many planting seasons can I survive if that were to be the case? And I think that's a question a lot of producers need to be asking.
Are there any other considerations that they should be taking into account?
Well, one thing is we've been focused on ad hoc payments. There is a substantial payment from Farm Bill programs, ARC-M PLC, Agricultural Risk Coverage Price Loss Coverage, that I mentioned earlier. And these payments made a big difference in that sort of 2015, 2017 period. And they still paid out a little bit after that. The payment rates for those were increased in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So given current forecasts, it's not guaranteed, given current forecasts, producers could expect substantial payments for the 2025 crop year in 2026, October 2026. So there is a chance that, maybe these higher support levels through Farm Bill programs will lessen the need for ad hoc payments. However, those payments were delayed the 2024 payments were delayed this year because of the government shutdown. So, and then this is really a sort of a question of what are your personal preferences? How much risk you're comfortable with? But, even though those Farm Bill payments are expected, things can go wrong with the government or anything else for that matter.
As we've discussed these 5 key considerations for what someone might want to do or how they could use their one-time government payment, what would you encourage people to take a deep dive look in with their accountant or even by themselves?
So I'll go first, and I think there's several things. Mine is going to be working capital. I mentioned the burn rate, figuring out, hey, if current revenue levels stay the same, and these payments don't materialize, or as Jenny just said, are delayed in 2026, how long can I survive, right? So plan out capital expenditures you may need, plan out operating expenses, calculate your burn rate, how many planting seasons can you go, and then figure out what these one-time ad hoc payments do to that. Is this something we need to save and hold back to extend that burn rate? Or if we're in a good working capital position, that's where we can go and evaluate maybe capital expenditure purposes, think about tax savings, and think about our immediate needs if the long term is already secure.
If people want to find more information about this or read on this topic, what's your recommendation?
So go to agmanager.info. We just put out a brief, top 5 considerations for managing large one-time government payments. It lays out what we've talked about here. Also reach out to any of us. This isn't a topic that people have been talking a lot about, but we have had 8 years of substantial but volatile ad hoc payments. So we think it's worth consideration in the current farm economy. The Department of Agricultural Economics is also doing a series of ag profitability conferences across the state of Kansas. There's 9 of these. They're in person. We're going to cover a variety of topics. So cash flow planning strategies. We'll look at the crop sector outlook. We'll look into trade. We'll look into managing farm programs. So, trying to get, I think, what was the term, Brady, what was the term you used? Survive in
advance.
Survive in advance. So it's not just about survival. It's also about advancement. So giving producers strategies that they can use.
Jenny, Brady, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
That was K-State Flinchbaugh Agricultural Policy Chair Jenny Ifft and K-State Associate Professor in Agricultural Economics Brady Brewer. If you'd like to read more on this topic, there is an article on agmanager.info titled Top 5 Considerations for Managing Large One-Time Government Payments. Jenny also mentioned in today's show the Ag Profitability Conferences. There is one coming up on the 9th in Manhattan, on the 11th in Burlington, and on the 17th in Hiawatha. You can check out the following dates and locations also on agmanager.info. Before we cut to a break, we're now going to be joined by USDA's Rod Bain and Lance Honig of the National Agricultural Statistics Survey as they discuss a revised USDA report schedule.
After a 6-week halt of USDA reports due to the government shutdown, catch-up in report release is occurring and will continue to occur in December. Lance Honig of the National Agricultural Statistics Service noted plans were in place in early November for report release in the event of the federal government reopening. One of those, a major agriculture department offering, was issued the day after reopening.
We did get the crop production report out on the 14th. It would have come just a few days earlier, so a very short delay there. And so some things are very quickly getting back on schedule.
That included reports released the Friday before Thanksgiving. Reports that originally had an October 1st issue date.
Things like grain crushings or cotton system, fats and oils, that work was virtually complete when the shutdown started.
Joining on that date, the regularly scheduled November cattle on feed report. Other reports need additional time to assimilate data and prepare for presentation. For instance, some offerings, such as the October and November agricultural prices report, are now scheduled for December 15th, while December's ag prices offering comes out December 31st, or the end-of-month release regularly slotted for ag prices. What about release dates for some larger reports?
Things like total or the census of horticultural specialties, things that are extremely large projects and very heavily impacted by a 6-week gap. We still don't know exactly when we're going to be able to catch all of that work up, because not only do we need to capture everything that we missed during those 6 weeks, but we've also got everything happening right now that would have been happening right now as well. And so a lot of moving parts.
And in some cases, reports not issued during the government shutdown will not be revisited or released.
Some examples that come to mind for me is some of the weekly crop progress information. You really can't go back in time and go back to folks and say, hey, as of second Sunday in October, what do you think the condition ratings were? What do you think harvest progress was? It's just physically not possible to recapture that information.
A complete list of NASA's revised report schedule is available online at www.nass.usda.gov. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you up ahead.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. Finding the perfect holiday gift for gardeners can be a challenge. These passionate individuals often spend their time outdoors and typically already have an extensive collection of tools and supplies. Calla Edwards, the K-State Extension Horticulture Agent for Butler County, conducted a survey among master gardeners and gardening enthusiasts that revealed their favorite tools, supplies, and plants.
So the first product I want to mention, and this is one that has been hands down the most recommended product on all of the surveys that I have sent out, the Hori knife. This versatile knife is a unique mixture of trowel, saw, and knife. So it offers a serrated blade on one side that's great for dividing perennials or cutting through roots in a garden. Some of them also have measurements on the blade that the gardeners really love to help them plant bulbs or to plant different seeds. Again, this has been the most recommended product for the last 2 years, by far, with multiple gardeners recommending it. A gardening cart has been probably the second most recommended item on my surveys for the last few years. Gorilla Cart was one that was recommended, and what the gardener really loved about it is it has an assisted dump feature, so you can pull the handle and dump things out the back end without having to dump the actual cart and wagon or dump the entire product over. But again, any type of large garden wagon or heavy-duty wagon can work really well for a gardener to help them move plants, move mulch, move the grandkids seems to be what the one at my parents' does quite often. Battery-operated tools have become increasingly popular over the years. I have given battery-operated tools to several different people, and they absolutely love them. They come in a range of prices. One of the tips that I always give people if they're thinking about giving a larger battery-operated item as a gift, so like the string trimmer, the leaf blower, hedge shears, the chainsaw, go to a store if you can and pick up those products. Handle them, see how they work, because there can be a big difference in weight from one product to another. Now, surprisingly, there haven't been a lot of plants that have been recommended throughout the years on my garden survey, but I wanted to talk about the few that have been recommended. Bulbs has been probably the most popular plant that's been recommended, both spring, summer, and fall flowering. Or amaryllis bulbs have been a great gift option. Some of the perennials that have been recommended, roses are recommended a lot, along with daylilies and native perennials. Houseplants can be a great gift for a gardener. Some of the ones that have been recommended are a monstera species, the Monstera deliciosa. Peace lilies have been recommended on several of our lists, as have varieties of Hoyas, different types of Hoyas. Now, a few miscellaneous ideas. Some of the recommendations have been for gift cards. And for some, that may seem like it's a little bit of a cop-out, just buying a gift card for a gardener. But in many instances, that may be one of the best gifts that you could give them, because it lets them purchase the product or the plants that they want when they want or need them. And then last but not least are coupons. My grandma loved it when I would give her coupons to come over and repot or clean up her houseplants and her geraniums, or when I'd come over and help weed her flower beds or prune different things. So maybe a coupon to help pull weeds or plant flowers. The fact that you're making the effort and wanting to put time into their passion and hobby means a lot more than maybe a gift that could have been purchased. So as we think about giving gifts this year, I really recommend that you take some time and maybe think outside of the box of what a traditional gift might be for the gardener in your life. I highly recommend that you do some reading and do some research looking into these different products, so that you can find the one that is perfect. Use this as a guide or suggestion and go from there.
That's K-State Extension Horticulture Agent for Butler County, Calla Edwards, with holiday gift ideas for gardeners. To listen to the full webinar, search for K-State Garden Hour and click on Most Recent Webinars. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.